Hello, I'm Maciej Mikos. Welcome back to World Talks, where every word matters. Moldova is opening EU accession negotiations only 2 years after being granted a candidate status. To talk about Moldova's speedway to Europe and the obstacles it will have to overcome, we're joined by Vlad Lupan, former Moldovan ambassador to the United Nations. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Ambassador, firstly, how do you feel about the official opening of EU accession negotiations by Chisinau?
I believe that the opening of these negotiations is a positive thing for the Republic of Moldova because ultimately the European Union goals are development goals. And for a country, the stability of the European Union, the development of the European Union are very positive. And the country needs to fulfill the accession criteria, which is democracy, rule of law, economic development. So all of these are positive elements. Compare that to the Russian development model, where the leader is the boss. Everything changes immediately as the leader wishes, and that's an unpredictable model. So the predictability and development of the European Union is going to be seen. It is seen in Chisinau, the Moldovan capital, as a very positive step, especially for this government that has declared its priority to join the European Union.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, it seems that the EU is doing its best to ensure that Moldova joins the bloc as soon as possible. Now, from your perspective, what is the realistic date for that to happen?
First of all, what I would like to underline is that this is no rapid accession or rapid progression. It is faster than it was until now. But Moldova already signed the Partnership and Cooperation Agreement with the European Union in 1994. It entered into force in 1998 when we had a pro-European government. Then another step was taken in 2005 when Moldova has signed EU-Moldova Partnership Agreement. Action plan. It also happened after a pro-Russian party was in power, but the Russian Federation attempted to pressure Moldova and to create a client state, a protectorate, with Russian citizens controlling Moldovan institutions through veto powers and participation in the government. That was the so-called resolution of the Transnistrian conflict, where I was a negotiator. And the Russian plan failed, luckily for us, and the government stepped in and decided to go with the European Union. So this is the second. In 2024, we're seeing the second development of this interaction between the European Union, Moldova, and the Russian Federation, where the Russian Federation attempts to pressure Moldova to control Moldova, and therefore the government attempts to find an alternative, a viable alternative for the Republic of Moldova. Now that Moldova was on the attack map of the Russian Federation in 2022, a number of reports have been verified, and Russian generals basically confirmed that. Of course, the European Union seized the moment finally with somewhat a delay and decided to open the discussions for a faster track of negotiation. But this cooperation does not come on an empty space. We started in 1994, 3 years after Moldova became independent. The membership, well, we still need to implement the Copenhagen criteria. Moldovan government still needs to implement a number of reforms. Economic development is an issue, particularly during the war. The economy tanked down and is now just recovering and finally reached a 2.5% development, which is good still during the war. Moldova is a hub for the Ukrainian goods through the Giurgiulești port in the south of Moldova, a port that we actually negotiated with the Ukrainians. That's an exchange of not exactly territories, but we received territories, Moldova received territories, and the Ukrainians received access to the villages in the south. So it's a progress through which Moldova went There is a certain level of development, but still a lot of things need to be done. We have signed the deep and comprehensive free trade area in 2014. We already don't have a visa requirement from the same time. Still, more works need to be done. And for that work to happen, Moldova needs a pro-European government that is able to do so. Now with the war, European Union, it also understands that this is a priority and it needs to support such a government in the Republic of Moldova. So that's what we are seeing. As for the timeline, the reforms are not a fast process and it's going to take some time. I don't think we're going to see a Moldovan membership in the next year or two, but I presume we can probably think about a period that is going to span over 4 years. And it's still not clear whether that would be enough for the future membership of the Republic of Moldova in the European Union.
So by the end of the decade, we'll definitely see Moldova in the EU. That's according to former Moldovan ambassador.
Hopefully.
Now, Mr. Ambassador, as you mentioned, there's a pro-European government in Chisinau now, but on the other hand, we have Russia that strongly opposes any European ambitions of Moldovans. Do you think that the Kremlin will try to stall this process by sowing some discord in Moldova?
Yes, absolutely. There is no doubt about it. I have seen a hacked plan of the Russian interference in the Republic of Moldova, not specifically for this period of time, but an older plan. So what we should expect in the immediate future are two major developments. The first development is that there are presidential elections in the Republic of Moldova in this fall, October. Mm-hmm. During the same day, we are going to see a referendum to join the EU. So two votes at the same time, on the same day. And it is very important. It's a very important vote. If the majority of the Moldovans are going to vote in favor of joining the European Union, of course, it's going to be very hard for the Russian Federation to then later attempt to claim that the Moldovans did not really want to join the European Union and they belong to the former Soviet space, which they are trying to recover through wars and conquest. So the referendum this fall is actually even more important than the elections of the president. But luckily, what we're seeing up to now is that both the president has a high percentage of credibility within the voting. Opinion polls show even an increase in the trust towards the current president, Maia Sandu, who was, by Moldovan law, previously the head of the governing party, but due to the legal provisions, she has to resign. But basically what we're seeing now is that both the president and her former now party are in the government. So there is a certain level of unity, same direction of the development, and the expectation is that she's going to win her presidency again. And the combination of the popularity of the European Union with the popularity of the president is going to also ensure that the referendum does not fail. However, the Russian Federation has already attempted to work against the referendum. The referendum for them is even more important than the elections of a pro-European president, because that would undermine the narratives of the Russian Federation that the populations of the Soviet Union would like to rejoin the former imperial Soviet Union or Russian Federation in one form or another. Right. So they are going to definitely work against it.
And in this regard, how problematic is the issue of Transnistria?
The Transnistrians have been previously used in earlier elections as a voting bloc against pro-European initiatives, pro-European parties. So basically, we have seen busing people were paid or directed by the factories, that many of those factories belong to the Russian Federation, actual Russian Federation. We're not talking about the so-called Transnistrian local enterprises or local actors. We're talking about the fact that Transnistrians, as per the previous decisions of the European Court of Human Rights, are basically controlled by the Russian Federation. And some of their factories belong to the Russians. So they send the people to vote and they direct them how to vote. So we are going to see some form of interference. This has been reported before. The same has happened with them during elections of the Ukrainian President Zelensky. In the past elections, they were also bussed within Moldova to the Ukrainian polling stations open on the territory of Moldova for those elections. And the previous data shows that they do vote in favor of the pro-Russian candidates. And we also have seen data in interviews with people directly who told us that they have been directed how to vote. How to vote means a vote against the pro-European governments. So we are going to see that from the point of view of voting. From the point of view of security, we are going to continue to see attempts to destabilize the Republic of Moldova, both, but also Western Ukraine, so that the Ukrainian forces are distracted from the Eastern Front towards the Transnistrian separatist region under Russian control. So there will be a combination of Transnistrians being used as an interference factor. There is going to be also Transnistrian use as a security threat, but we are also going to see direct interference from the Russian Federation, as we have seen in the previous attempts last year when an FSB agent was arrested in Moldova in an attempt to organize a protest and eventually even overthrow the Moldovan government.
Right.
This is going to continue.
I see. Now, Ukraine, which you mentioned a few times, opened the accession negotiations on the very same day Moldova did. And talking about the criteria both countries have to meet to join the bloc, well, Ukraine is struggling with corruption. How much of a problem is it in Moldova?
Moldova had to import Moldovan from United States of America. I live in the USA now. I'm a professor at New York University and the Fairleigh Dickinson University, and I even know the family. So the Moldovan government actually had to import a Moldovan from the diaspora, from the United States, who is a prosecutor, and put her as the anti-corruption prosecutor to make sure that this subject is tackled properly. This is a very challenging subject for both Moldova and Ukraine, because that needs to be tackled. This is a part of the rule of law system. There is no rule of law without anti-corruption. And as a matter of fact, this government was elected on an anti-corruption and pro-Europe campaign. So they have an obligation towards the Moldovan public to make sure that the corruption is dealt with in the Republic of Moldova. They have done a number of steps. They have brought in an anti-corruption prosecutor. Several actions by this anti-corruption prosecutor have already happened, including, for example, seizure of some property in France. So the cooperation with the European bodies, European Union bodies, is already on the way. These properties were an outcome of corrupt activities. Moldova has suffered considerably from prior corruption scandals. So there is a progress. Definitely there is a progress. And there is also desire by the Moldovan population to do so. We don't see a similar trend, for example, in the Russian Federation. There is a complaint about the fact that there is a corruption-based system there, but there is not enough push to change that system from within. People don't vote in the same manner. Moldovans voted massively. That's how this current government is in power, on an anti-corruption platform. So there is an internal desire, there is governmental desire, there are some steps that are taking place, there is resistance from within the system, obviously. People are thinking about losing money. And what we're also seeing is an import of the European Union advisors to help us overcome the selection of judges, of processes, prosecutors. So it's a process, but it moves in the right direction.
So all that we have to do is just to keep our fingers crossed that Moldova joins the EU as soon as it can. Professor Vlad Lupan, former Moldovan ambassador to the United Nations, was our guest today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invite.
Thank you. And thank you for watching, and stay with us for much more here on TVP World.